Today on the program, great progress in the Palmetto State on some important pro-life legislation. The sponsor of that bill will join us with an update on what's happening there. Also, a Kansas teacher that was disciplined for refusing to use preferred pronouns just won a $95,000 settlement with the school district. We'll give you those details of that happy story as well. And later in the show, North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson has moved from a factory floor to the Lieutenant Governor's office. He'll join us later to tell us a little bit of his remarkable story. First, the headlines, though. President Biden will address the nation tonight from Philadelphia with a speech on, quote, the continued battle for the soul of the nation, end quote. The president is expected to continue making the case that people who don't support his political agenda are a threat to democracy. Now, in anticipation, Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy said this earlier today.
The problem with Joe Biden is he does not understand the soul of America. The tens of millions of hardworking, law-abiding citizens that he vilifies that simply want to have a say in their kids' education, to go to a school board meeting, want a gasoline price that they can afford, no longer wants inflation to continue to rise, afraid to go out in their streets to be safe again. They want a stronger, safer, more prosperous America, and all he does is vilify them to distract from the disasters and no plan he has to save America from where we are today.
So who is right about what the soul of America is? And what else can we expect from the president tonight? Joining me now to discuss this, as well as what he saw on a recent trip to the southern border, is U.S. Representative Andy Biggs. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. He represents Arizona's 5th District. Congressman Biggs, good to see you today.
Good to be with you, Joseph.
So President Biden ran on a platform of trying to unite the country. Do you feel like he's fulfilling that promise with the speech that he's expected to give tonight?
Not intentionally. I think he's uniting the country, that we're going in the wrong direction. I think more and more people every day say, wait a second, things aren't copacetic. This is not what we intended. That's not what we think. But in reality, this president has been, quite frankly, the most divisive president in my lifetime. I mean, we've really moved to the edges because of his intransigence and his failure to recognize who we are as Americans and to recognize individual liberty, individual choice, individual accountability, and individual prosperity. That's where some of his biggest failings have been.
Now, the White House says that this speech is about the continued battle for the soul of the nation. What do you think he means by that?
Well, when I hear him talk about it, he means anybody that opposes him is a danger and threat. That's what he has said. That's what autocrats do. That's what petty tyrants do. That's what leaders of the former Soviet Union or Xi Jinping in China do. And it dehumanizes anyone who is antithetical to his point of view. I think when he says it, he means you do not have the soul of the nation. You don't understand the soul of the nation unless you're doing what Joe Biden wants you to do. And that's what's extremely dangerous about the president today.
I think a lot of people agree with you. In fact, former presidential speechwriter Mark Thiessen, he wrote a great op-ed in the Washington Post today talking about how unusual this speech is. And he was a presidential speechwriter. And in this article, he goes through the history of primetime addresses. And he notes that presidents have used these to talk about 9/11, hurricanes, the war in Afghanistan, financial crisis, other terror attacks, economic programs. But this appears to be the first time the president has asked the press to cancel their primetime programming so he can do what appears to be a speech to essentially say that his political opponents are bad people. Now, we haven't heard the speech yet, but does the timing and even his advanced framing of this strike you as a bit unusual compared to other primetime addresses from the White House?
Yeah, it's really different. I mean, I remember when President Reagan came on, and every time he did, they were incredibly important issues, everything from the Soviet Union and addressing issues during the Cold War. I remember even Jimmy Carter, when he was president, coming on talking about the energy crisis. And while I disagreed with what he said, and I was a young man at the time, You looked at it and you said, okay, well, this is a serious thing, what's going on, because we were living it. But what's happening here is the timing of this right before the midterm elections. The timing of this is pretty questionable. And then the topic itself to basically dehumanize, and that, make no mistake, that's what he's trying to do, dehumanize anyone who disagrees or takes a heterodox position compared to him. They're going to be demonized. I mean, it's consistent with what he's been saying lately, where he talked about using F-15s on Americans who have guns, and basically said that you're a pseudo-fascist if you don't adhere to his plan. That is dangerous rhetoric coming from this president. And quite frankly, if the previous occupant of the White House had said anything like that, he would have been castigated and yelled and screamed at. And we're not hearing much from the left-wing media today.
Now, later in the program, in our conversation with North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, we're going to play several clips from President Biden that essentially support that statement that you're making there. But we haven't heard the clip. And it sounds like you also are skeptical about what we're going to get. We haven't heard the speech, I should say, and we should give it some time. But of course, tomorrow we will have the opportunity to respond to what he does say. But the early indications about this are concerning, to say the least. Now, you also were at the border recently, and I want to play, the White House press secretary said that they're actually doing, this is Karine Jean-Pierre, she said they're actually doing a really good job at the border right now. Let's play clip 12.
The fact that we are securing the border, the fact that we are securing record levels of funding from DHS so they can stop illicit drugs from entering into the country, the fact that it's not just drug traffickers that we're dealing with as well, we're stopping financiers. This is what's happening with this under this administration.
Congressman Biggs, how does her statement there compare to what you've seen at the border recently?
I just think to myself, she must be living in La La Land. I mean, this is the type of rhetoric you would read in a dystopian novel like 1984, Brave New World. She is just, nothing she said there is accurate. It's 180 degrees away from the truth. So she says, we're stopping more drugs. Well, you're stopping more drugs, but you're still only getting 8 to 10%. That's according to CBP officials. So it's a total disaster on the border. Having been there just a couple of days ago, and I can tell you, Joseph, in a facility in Yuma, Arizona, designed for 1,200, there were 2,300 people, and most of those people, about 90% of those people, will be released into the country within just a few days. We're understaffed. They're not building the walls. Their policies have caused this problem. It is a crisis. And I've invited her to come on down to the border with me so I could show her what's really happening down there. And she's, we'll see if she takes me up on that.
Well, that would be helpful, because there does seem to be a disconnect between what those who are visiting the border, like yourself, have seen and what we're seeing in the official statements from the White House. But also, while you were at the border there, you said you saw a Russian family was apprehended. Do you think that people worldwide have figured out that the way to get into the country anyway at any time you want is through the southern border?
Oh, absolutely. Look, some estimates place it about 4.6 million people. But so you don't come to the port of entry, you come across the southern border. And this was a Russian family. And by the way, Joseph, when we were there, I didn't think we'd see anybody because just the calendar and the itinerary took us there. It's 116 degrees in Yuma. And guess what? There they were, this family from Russia. And most of the traffic's between midnight and 8 in the morning. And they're getting 1,000 a day in Yuma, just walking across, contrary to what the White House says. So, yeah, the whole world knows it's over 100 different nations that have come through Yuma. And last year was 157 different nations that came through. What you're seeing is a diaspora from other nations and a migration into the United States like we probably have never seen in the history of the world. And for the White House to not even get that, they don't even know it, don't acknowledge it, they ignore it, in fact, say the exact opposite and lie about it, it shows me that it's willful.
Well, for those watching at TonyPerkins.com or at NRB TV, we just played some clips of you at the border, and you happen to be standing in front of a border wall. It appears that there's some security there. Is that not consistent along the border?
Not consistent at all. In fact, what you saw me standing in front of there were the containers that Governor Ducey put up there just a week or so ago. And they're working for, because they're actually funneling people down, because 2 miles further south is a wide open space with no fencing other than Normandy fencing, which is designed for vehicles, not people. So you go down there, and what you're going to see is all those people are coming across. So where I'm standing there, that's in front of the Morelos Dam. That's where it slows it down. But you still get 1,000 people a day, mostly from that open area. So you just redirect everybody down to that open area, which is helpful makes it easier for everybody to surrender, makes it easier for us to apprehend. But the reality is you have 119 miles of border in that sector alone, but you have lots of gaps and an entire 7-mile gap in that area where that's where most people are coming through.
Congressman Biggs, one other topic I'd like to get with you on the topic of education. National test results were released today. They were discouraging on the heels of COVID. With math for 9-year-olds, their average test scores declined 5 points in reading and 7 points in math. This was the largest average score decline in reading since 1990 and the first ever score decline in mathematics, according to this one test. What are we learning from this?
Well, we learned that the school lockdowns had an incredibly detrimental effect on young students. And particularized within that study, it also shows that certain demographic groups were even harmed more, where they had double-digit reduction in competency. So this goes with what myself and so many people were saying at the beginning. You will have secondary and tertiary impacts on individuals with lockdowns, whether it be the lockdown of a city, a state, or in this case, so many schools that locked down. And you'll find out that so many of these students logged in once or never even logged in. They weren't getting their education. And it's going to be very, very hard to catch up for some of these kids.
And that is the challenge in front of us now. Can we recover? It's one thing to admit your mistakes, even if we have done that, but it's another to be able to make up for them. Congressman Biggs, thanks for stopping by today.
Thanks, Joseph. Take care.